this is Matt once again. Welcome back to the videos. The paid request for someone that, before I say anything, wanted to remain anonymous. Now, I don't mind if someone wants to remain anonymous for whatever reason may be, or they want me to use a username, or so you just have to tell me ahead of time. But that's fine, so I'll call this person Mr. Anonymous, who wanted me to talk about the Blazing Ninja from 1973. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, topics, reactions, commentaries, reviews, re-reviews, or what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, what do I say about this film? It's a Godfrey Ho movie. And I'm sitting there going, I've heard of this guy before, and because I've seen a couple of his films, Robo Vampire, among others, where it looks like two movies being thrust into one, because it is two movies just half-assedly edited into one. And this might have been the first film he did that with. Could be wrong. And there is no blazing ninja, and you can barely say that there's ninjas in this either. There's people they call ninjas. They don't look like ninjas at all. This is one of those movies that it's like switching channels. It was so hard to follow this movie, because it'd be this, then this, then this. I'm like, well, how does one relate to the other, relate to the other? Incredibly shitastic, poor editing. Overdub to comedic effect. It's like they took I don't know, like I don't know what the one movie would be, because I guarantee you this dialogue was not the original dialogue, and all the overdubbing. Maybe it's like I'll get to it. Mix in with a bluesploitation film, because there's a little bit of bluesploitation there. Because, like, the very opening of the film, you have this guy pretend to be Bruce Lee with the Dame of Death yellow suit on, fighting this Japanese guy, which I actually thought this was going to come into play later, because there's been a few films I've seen where they show, like, opening action scenes, and then you don't see them later on in the plot. No. It just, this guy looking like Bruce Lee, Dame of Death, dressed like that, is fighting some Japanese guy, knocks him the hell out, and then we go along our story where you have this other guy that come across. It's a very anti-Japanese movie, very pro-Chinese movie, and this guy's talking to the others saying, "The ninjas call you master, but I won't. They call me sir. You ninja bastards, you think you're God's gift." And this one guy who's not the wannabe Bruce Lee, but some different guy, because we're in a different movie now, beats the shit out of these guys. The sound effects is that classic overdub sound, overdubbing. There are times where people kick and the kick does not connect, but the guy reacts. Very much that heavily over choreographed. As I said, then it goes to these two people who I didn't know who they were, talking about a deal about army uniforms, contracts of army uniforms. Then goes back to the wannabe Bruce Lee training with someone who's like, if the wannabe Bruce Lee's in a yellow jogging, what is that suit you call in Game of Death? The yellow, like, jogging type of suit. The other guy's in a suit like that, but a different color. I forget if it was green or something. I forget the color, but it's that kind of suit. And they're training. And the dubbing is like, oh, they worked for this resistance to try to very lightly fit all this in. Because you know it's a different movie because this character never interacts with the other characters in the other movie within this. He never interacts with those guys. He never interacts with the guy who said, "You ninja bastards, you think your God's gift is being the shit out of them." They'll come back to a driver talking to one of the guys who had the contract for the army uniform saying, "We're going to punish you for what you did to the resistance." So apparently it's the Chinese resistance going up against the Japanese. And like they take this guy because you went against the resistance and you sold them stuff, so we tie you up. But if you don't listen to us again, we're going to hang you a different way. Then it cuts to this group in a meeting saying we're going to rescue one of our secret agents. I mean, when was there secret agents? Who's the secret agent? Who are the people talking? Who are any of you motherfuckers? Then it cuts back to a guy burning something. I don't remember who the guy was. I don't know what the fuck he was burning. Then there's dialogue about supposedly the most famous spy of Japan is coming to fight us. But then there's also a henchman. Then it cuts to the wannabe Bruce Lee, and it's not the one. I don't think it's Bruce Lee with L.E. It's not the one from Bruce's Superhero and Enter the Game of Death, which is my favorite. It's not him. I think that's Bruce Lee with L.E. It's not him, Sally. I don't think it's the other. I don't know which one it is. I don't know. And Bolo Yun is in this. Fucking guy got around. Bolo Yun. If you don't know who that is, come on. If you know martial arts in this era, you know who Bolo Yun is. He was in Enter the Dragon, fighting against John Saxon. Of course, he would be Chun Li, the main bad guy in Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He also come back as one of the big bad guys in Double Impact, also with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Shoot Fighter 2. He did a couple films with Billy Blanks. Was it TC 2000? I think he was in the villain and was Tiger Claws or whatever the hell the movies were. But it's Bolo Yun. He also did a lot of these Bruce Exploitation films. He was in Enter the Game of Death. He might have been in the clones of Bruce Lee. He was in a lot of those too. Those Bruce Exploitation films. So he pops in here. Now, again, I don't know where this footage was taken from, which Bruce Exploitation movie it was. So the guy still dressed up in his Game of Death yellow jumpsuit fights Bolo Yun, and it ends with this laughable insert they put in where it looks like a fist is placed right on Bolo's neck, and then he flies back. And he gets beaten up, but then I guess he dies from getting beaten up, which seems like a very weak ending for Bolo Yun. Bolo Yun. And then it cuts away, and we don't see that Bruce Lee wannabe guy for a long fucking time. Just now, it's more about this General Yoshido and this most famous spy of Japan coming, and this lady talking to General Yoshido, going, she stick up for the resistance, and against him, going, you will fail because you are wrong. Well, that's all it takes. I mean, you're failed because you're wrong. I mean, if that's all it takes, shit. It's pretty easy. There's a fucking bit, like 27 minutes in, I wrote this down. I'm hearing the music, I'm like, why does this music sound familiar? It's the theme from Shaft. You don't hear Isaac Hayes' voice, but it's the music from Shaft. Boom, 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 boom. So yeah, the Shaft theme music is in this movie. Which, I mean, I've seen that before. What was it? There was the one movie that had, I think, the Rocky music in it. It was one of those Bruce Exploitation films. God, I forget what it was called. It was one I liked, too. If you gave me a few minutes, I remember it. But Soul Brothers of Kung Fu. There you go. And that's by a computer. Something finally downloaded. But I mean, is that the fucking Shaft music? Yes, it is. At one point during the scene, one of their buddies are shot, and it takes a while for them to find a doctor, and they do, and they get him there. But he pulls out a gun and he says, "No, I'm not a real doctor, but you're really dead." Now, if you're not listening closely, it almost sounds like he says, "I'm not a real doctor, but you're really gay," because the sound quality is so poor. But he says, "No, I'm not a real doctor, but you're really dead." Really dead. What? You're really dead. What? Dead. Oh, dead. Okay. And at one point, the general gets the guy who was beating up the ninja bastards near the beginning, which they're never dressed up like ninjas. No one is ever dressed up like a fucking ninja, and there's no blazing ninja. There's no fucking fire in the movie, let alone blazing. So the general gets that guy who's beating up people. Again, not the Bruce Lee wannabe, because that's a different film. So they never the twins shall be seen together. But it's the other guy, and the other guy is being tortured, and he's saying, "Go away, or I'll throw up." Go piss your pants. And they find out that this guy, who's like a higher up, is really the leader of the resistance, the underground resistance. And he was childhood friends with General Yoshido. And the other people are ready to head out, and they're going to have a fight on their own. Like in our school days. Yes. Just like back then, in our school days. Are you sure it was back in your school days? Are you sure? And did you really fight like this in your school days? Must have been some really shitty school days. So then the leader, which barely felt like a character throughout most of the film, and then you find out much late in the movie of his importance. You never see the Bruce Lee wannabe again. I mean, there's dialogue that was dubbed much earlier that he's with the resistance, but that's it. You never see him again. They just, all that shit's done. The leader gets wounded by other henchmen when the bad guy's trying to fight, and the bad guy gets pissed about that. There's literally a line where he says, "You shot my dearest enemy! How dare you! You shot my dearest enemy!" And then the General Yoshida looks at the leader of resistance and the girl that told him the line, "You will fail because you were wrong." He says, "Arrest them." They get arrested. And then the end. So did the bad guys win? Is that what we're saying? So the bad guys won? I mean, I guess the other resistance left. I have a feeling this was not the plot of this movie before all the shenanigans and re-editing and Godfrey Holdness got inflicted in this. Granted, it seemed like a fucking boring movie anyway. And the Bruceploitation, that only makes up less than 10 minutes, it felt. I mean, 10 minutes, that'd be pushing it. Maybe 10 minutes. It felt like less than 10 minutes. But not a lick of it made sense. Poor sound design, poor quality of editing, poor picture quality of where you find this. Because there are times that the picture sometimes looks slanted like this, and sometimes like this. But sometimes the picture looks slanted like this. The ridiculous dialogue. I guess there's some people that just laugh at this stuff. I'm like, I'd just rather see a better movie that makes a lick of sense. The idea of an order of crap of a bit of what's going on or what's happening or the characters or has better action. Because there's a couple fights, but it's nothing you haven't seen done miles better. And even cheapo flicks. Enter the Game of Death, Soul Brothers of Kung Fu, even the clones of Bruce Lee. What was that one? The one where the Dragon Lives Again, where Bruce Lee's in the underworld and teams up with Popeye to fight James Bond, the Man with No Name, and like Dracula. And there's a bit old joke about Bruce Lee's boner. It's like his nunchucks, or maybe it was a boner. I don't know. Go watch The Dragon Lives Again. There's a lot of other movies you watch more than this and better than this. Hell, you want to get more laughs? Watch Samurai Cop. Samurai Cop made more sense than this movie. What Samurai Cop is a better edited film and more comprehensible than this movie, that says a lot. Just watch Samurai Cop if you want that badness. This is just... I guess if you want to know what Garfio is, this is pretty much, for I gather, his first stab, and they're ready to be confused as hell. So with that said, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.